Main event of the evening.
These days are
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today we are discussing Garry Marshall's 7th feature film, Frankie and Johnny.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in Frankie and Johnny.
Frankie, a waitress in her 30s, takes the bus to Altoona to be godmother at her friend's son's baptism. Back in New York City, Johnny is released from prison.
You're the best cook in the cell block.
I sincerely plan on never seeing you again.
Afterwards, Frankie's mother passive-aggressively notes her lack of grandchildren and admits she worries about her daughter in New York.
Mom, maybe I'm not the happiest person who ever lived, but that's not your fault.
Frankie returns to New York and the restaurant where she works, the Apollo. Her coworker Helen has fallen ill and has to go home early. Johnny arrives at the Apollo to apply for a job as a short-order cook. Owner Nick is hesitant, but his niece, visiting from Greece, Artemis, advises him to hire Nick because she likes his face. Nick agrees, and adds that he believes in giving second chances.
Now, this country of yours gave me another chance.
Frankie returns to her apartment, where she finds a stranger fixing her shelves. He's Bobby, who's dating her friend and neighbor, Tim. Tim tells Frankie there's a whole world out there.
And there's no use pretending there's not just because our feelings got hurt or there's some goddamn virus.
So she's considering just getting a VCR instead. Johnny meets a sex worker, but all he wants to do is spoon with her clothes on. The next day at work, Frankie's friend and fellow waitress Cora ogles Johnny's ass while he chops lettuce.
Look at this guy, he's a hot dog. He's cute though, he's got a cute little ass, hasn't he?
Johnny seems more interested in Frankie though, but she's too stressed from work to be impressed by his quoting Romeo and Juliet to her. They get a call. Helen is in the hospital. Frankie and Cora visit her, and Cora wonders if they'll end up like her, alone.
She's not alone. She's alone.
The next day at the Apollo, Johnny is impressed by Frankie's quick thinking when a customer collapses. He asks her out, and she deflects him.
Keep him company, I'll go wait for the ambulance.
At home, Frankie watches people through her apartment window, including a woman who is being hit by her husband. Frankie, Cora, and fellow waitress Netta attend Helen's funeral. They're the only people there, aside from Johnny near the front. Cora and Netta quickly leave, and Cora accuses Frankie of only staying to pick up Johnny.
You're picking up a guy in a funeral parlor in front of a freaking stiff.
The next day at the Apollo, Frankie asks Johnny why he went, not having known Helen, and he says you don't need to know someone to have empathy with them. He looked at her pictures and he knew her, adding that she had a disappointed look like his mother.
I knew she had these dreams that weren't quite enough to keep her heart beating.
They're interrupted by Netta, and Frankie is none too pleased when Johnny claims that she was asking him out. That night, Cora and Johnny have sex, although she's put off by how quiet he is when he climaxes. He claims to have trained himself to do so, due to having been in a place where loud orgasms are less than ideal.
What, you mean like a monastery?
Yeah, sort of.
She doesn't let him stay the night, saying that if he does, they'll just lie awake all night, wondering why they didn't hit it off. Frankie watches Johnny play handball outside with a cop, after which he asks her to be his date to the going-away party for Peter, a busboy who sold his first script. She turns him down, but ultimately is kind of won over by his persistence.
Why do you want to go out with me?
Because the heart does things for reasons that reason cannot understand.
That night, Tim and Bobby help Frankie prepare for the party. Johnny picks her up, and makes awkward small talk with Tim and Bobby when he learns they're gay, and helps Bobby hook up Frankie's VCR. He also learns Frankie collects ceramic elephants. At the party, Frankie again rebuffs Johnny's advances, and refuses to say how old she is.
None of your business.
She and Peter say goodbye to each other, and Peter admits that on his first day, when he was really broke, he stole some of her tips. Frankie already knew, and also knew that he put them back the next day. After the party, Frankie admits to Johnny that she collects elephants because her father took her to see Dumbo when she was 7, right before he left. They stop at a flower shop, where they have their first kiss, in front of a truck full of flowers.
I wish you'd stop looking at me like that.
Like what?
Like that, it's too intense. You don't look, you stare. It makes me nervous.
Back at her apartment, they almost have sex, only to stop because Johnny doesn't have any condoms. In the kitchen, she admits she'll be 35 in November to him, and tells him where she keeps the condoms. They have sex, and Frankie gets Johnny to actually make noises. On a later date, Frankie tells Johnny she thinks he's too needy. She also admits to him that she dropped out of high school. At the bowling alley where Frankie and her friends have their bowling night, Johnny is amazed to learn that Frankie is from Altoona, because he was born there. He tells Frankie he's in love with her, and wants to marry her and have 4 or 5 kids. She lashes out at him, and claims to hate children, and then finally admits that she cannot have any. He says they'll adopt. He says he comes on so strong so she won't retreat back. Tim pulls him away.
Okay, Johnny, that's enough. You're making her cry.
Boy, are you barking up the wrong tree.
At the grocery store, Frankie sees the woman from the window who is being abused. She asks if there's anything she can do, and the woman claims not to know what she's talking about. Johnny keeps calling Frankie's apartment, and Frankie keeps ignoring him. At the Apollo, Frankie and Johnny both come in on Saturday night, their night off, and they promise not to get in each other's way. On their break, she gets him to admit that he was married and spent 18 months in jail for forgery. His prolific reading is thanks to Henry Hank Hill, who gave him his books before his execution. Johnny cooked his last meal. After the Apollo closes, Frankie admits that her last serious relationship ended 3 years ago when he left her for her best friend. Johnny tells her about the last time he saw his kids, when he was too scared to leave the car and actually go talk to them. They go back to Frankie's apartment together, discussing how Johnny became a cook in prison and how Frankie originally introduced her ex and friend.
I gave her my old television. They're probably watching it together at this very moment. I hope it explodes and blows their faces off.
Inside, he asks her to open her robe because he wants to look at her. She acquiesces.
That's good.
But also monologues about how much she hated her pet parakeet as a child and threw it in the trash when it died.
That's bad.
In bed, she admits that she's looking for someone to look after her this time, but also accuses him of smothering her and expecting her to give up everything for him. He says he thought they were kindred spirits, sharing great affinity. She says she knows what kindred means, and he asks if she does affinity. She accuses him of making fun of her lack of education and demands that he leave.
I thought you were sad, Johnny. I thought you were weird. I didn't know you were cruel.
Johnny takes the phone and calls a radio show, Midnight with Marlin, to ask for the name of a piece of music they were just playing, so he can give the record to Frankie. It's Debussy's Clair de Lune, and Johnny recounts the story of their love to try and convince Marlin to play Clair de Lune again. Frankie shows Johnny a mark on the back of her neck, and says her ex did it with a belt buckle. He's the reason she can't have kids, because he assaulted her when she was pregnant, causing a miscarriage.
It's official. I can't have children.
She breaks down crying, and admits that she's afraid. Johnny admits that he can't make the bad go away, but he can be next to her. Frankie once again pushes him away. Johnny turns on the radio. Midnight with Marlin is playing Clair de Lune.
Anywhere, you two moonbeams, whoever, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, this one's for you.
He finds Frankie brushing her teeth, and she gives him a spare toothbrush which hasn't been used. As the sun rises, Frankie sees the abusive husband neighbor is now alone, his wife having left him. There's a montage of their friends as the sun rises, and then Johnny joins Frankie on the fire escape, where she admits she's 36.
Thank you, Peter. That was Frankie and Johnny. It was released on Friday, October 11th, 1991. While not a runaway hit like Beaches and Pretty Woman, Frankie and Johnny earned a respectable $67 million on a $29 million budget during its initial theatrical run. The biggest movie in theaters at that time was Terry Gilliam's The Fisher King. Other films in circulation at the time included
Deceived, Ricochet, Necessary Roughness, Other People's Money, and Ernest, Scared, Stupid.
Peter, of those films I just mentioned, do any of them appeal to you?
Yes. Ernest, Scared, Stupid.
Ernest, Scared, Stupid. Share it with someone you love.
Frankie and Johnny was directed by Garry Marshall. It was written by Terrence McNally based on his own two-character play, Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune, which opened off-Broadway in 1987 with Kathy Bates and F. Murray Abraham in the title roles. Kathy Bates lobbied hard for the lead in this movie, but obviously did not get it. Terrence McNally was born in St. Petersburg, Florida, and moved around a lot as a child. His parents ran bars and restaurants. He grew up to be one of the most popular and acclaimed playwrights of his generation. He's been called the Bard of the American Theater, which is very appropriate since Shakespeare was one of his earliest inspirations.
I was rather amused when people thought Frankie and Johnny, they said, oh, you've written a realistic play. And I think they think naturalism, realism is, quote, turning on real water, or they actually, I think, made a Western sandwich in that one. You could smell some onions and peppers frying, and that's not naturalism. I think that's, in many ways, the most poetic and unnaturalistic play I've written, but the set fooled a lot of people.
Besides Frankie and Johnny, his best-known works include Love, Valor, Compassion, and Masterclass about Maria Callas, plus the librettos for The Full Monty, Kiss of the Spider-Woman, and Ragtime. McNally won multiple Tonys and Drama Desk Awards for his work. Sadly, he died of COVID in 2020. Peter, do you have any feelings about the work of Terrence McNally, either this play or other ones?
I was pretty obsessed with Ragtime in middle school. I think that he and Ahrens and Flaherty did a good job of adapting the novel/film in a way that isn't just like a one-to-one translation.
Were you familiar with Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune before this movie?
I was not, no. I felt like it was one of those plays that you needed to see live. But for this movie, I did seek out recorded productions, and I did find one that I enjoyed.
I watched one as well, and I enjoyed it too. I can see why it gets revived all the time. Obviously, it's a very simple play to stage. It puts a lot of burden on your two actors, but it also gives them a lot of things to do. And I could see how Terrence McNally used that play as the roadmap for this screenplay. Basically, all the major story events that happen in this movie are things that Frankie and Johnny just talk about in the play. As for the music in this movie, the score was written by Marvin Hamlisch, the New York-born composer, conductor, and songwriter who is a mainstay of films, theater, and popular music from the 1960s to the 2010s. You know him from such stage shows as A Chorus Line, They're Playing Our Song, and The Goodbye Girl, and such films as The Sting and The Way We Were. Marvin was an EGOT, having won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. Very sadly, Marvin died after a brief illness in 2012. He was only 68. Peter, what did you think of the score for Frankie and Johnny?
Hamlisch's score, I think, tends towards these big, sweeping romantic strings, and I was very glad that they never got overwhelming or overly noticeable. But at the same time, I do feel a little bit bad for him because the piece of music that is central to this film is Clair de Lune. And next to Clair de Lune, anyone is going to fade into the background.
When you're adapting a play called Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune, you have a pretty clear directive when you're writing your score. And I would say that the score for this film quotes Clair de Lune many, many times and also quotes Frankie and Johnny, the song, several times. A lot of Marvin's job was done for him, really, before the movie even started. The film and the play get their title from a traditional American murder ballad, the lyrics of which start with Frankie and Johnny were sweethearts or Frankie and Johnny were lovers.
Frankie and Johnny were sweethearts. They were true as a blue, blue sky.
It tells the sad story of a woman who kills her lover because he cheats on her even after he promised never to hurt her. The song, which may have been inspired by one or more real murders, seems to date back to about the 1910s. It became a jazz standard in the 1920s and has been covered in many styles by many artists ever since. Elvis Presley had a hit with it in 1966 when he made his own Frankie and Johnny movie. Depending on the version that you hear, Frankie is either arrested or executed for killing Johnny. I know the song Frankie and Johnny from its repeated use in Looney Tunes, but did you have any history with that song?
I remember hearing it a lot when I was a kid. I don't remember what version, but I do remember singing it a lot. I think it might have been on some sort of compilation CD, but I don't remember what it was called or what it was a compilation of. I don't think it was a children's album because that would be kind of a weird song to put on a children's album, but yeah.
The other key piece of music in this film is Clair de Lune, French for Moonlight, by French composer Claude Debussy.
I love Debussy. Sometimes all I can think about is Debussy.
It is the third movement of his Suite Bergamasque, a collection of 4 piano pieces written circa 1890, but not published until 1905 because Debussy didn't think they reflected his mature style. The third movement, inspired by a poem by Paul Verlaine, is the most popular by far and is one of the most famous piano compositions in all of Western music. Peter, what do you think of how this movie uses Clair de Lune?
Clair de Lune is basically what triggers the romantic reconciliation at the end. It's the way that Johnny is finally able to break through Frankie's walls and get her to take a step towards a real relationship with him. Clair de Lune is the perfect piece of music to do that with because it's the sensation of being in love. If it was basically any other piece of music, I don't think it would work nearly as well.
Clair de Lune has a mysterious power to it. It is both romantic and wistful and sort of sad. I think it's because the first statement of the melody is so exposed and so simple and lonely sounding. And when I watched that production of the play, when Marlon the disc jockey played Clair de Lune, I actually got chills from that. During the opening credits, we hear a new song recorded for this movie called Frankie and Johnny, A Man and a Woman by Terence Trent D'Arby.
Frankie and Johnny, well, that was all right.
The song was very, very early 90s. It's got the slow jam music. You've got the high falsetto singing. It's just such a musical snapshot that I found it a little bit funny. Although I'm sure that's not what they were going for.
Other songs heard in this movie include
What a Fool Believes by the Doobie Brothers, Dangerous on the Dance Floor by Musto de Bones,
The Devil Made Me Do It by Golden Earring, Your Love Just Ain't Right by Angel, Love Shack by the B-52s, It Must Be Love by Ricky Lee Jones, and Slang Yo Thang by The Rhythm.
Peter, I was very surprised to hear Love Shack in the middle of this movie. How about you?
I was surprised, but also delighted. I think Love Shack would be a very fun song to bowl to, which is how it's used in this movie.
As for our main cast members, I'll start with Al Pacino as Johnny.
Though my lips were sealed, my mind and my body were just shooting off fireworks.
Born in East Harlem in 1940, Al is simply one of the most famous and successful actors of the last half century or so, with decades of roles in theater, film, and television. By the time he made this movie, he had already been a leading man for 2 decades. His breakthrough role was as Michael Corleone in The Godfather in 1972. He followed this with films like
Serpico and Justice for All, Dog Day Afternoon, Scarface, Heat, Carlito's Way, Donnie Brasco, and dozens more.
He's even played such real-life figures as Dr. Jack Kevorkian, Bill Spector, and Jimmy Hoffa. He's won an Oscar, 2 Emmys, and 2 Tonys, among countless other accolades. As of 2025, he is still working. Peter, what did you think of Al Pacino as Johnny?
For me, Al Pacino as a performer is defined by this combination of intensity and vulnerability, and that is very much what comes through in his portrayal of Johnny. Johnny is a lot. You can see where it could be romantic, but you can also see where it could be kind of annoying and off-putting and a little bit scary, especially if you are maybe not looking for a relationship at this time.
I think Al Pacino, for all the reasons that you mentioned, is actually perfect for Johnny. He is a very passionate and very intense actor, and Johnny, as you mentioned, is a lot to deal with. When I started watching at first, I felt like, oh, Johnny's coming on too strong, this is too much, or Al Pacino is doing too much. But then as it went on, I realized, oh no, this is what Johnny is. And then when I saw the stage performance of Frankie and Johnny in the Clair de Lune, that actor does not underplay Johnny either. You play this role big. We also have Michelle Pfeiffer as Frankie.
I hate going to parties alone. I always feel like everybody's staring at me.
Michelle is an actress from Santa Ana, California, who was a dominant presence in the films of the 1980s and 90s after early roles in The Hollywood Knights, Grease 2, and Scarface, where she worked with Al Pacino. Michelle moved on to such hits as
Married to the Mob, The Witches of Eastwick, Dangerous Liaisons, The Fabulous Baker Boys, Dangerous Minds, Batman Returns, and The Age of Innocence.
She's a Golden Globe winner and a 3-time Oscar nominee. In more recent years, you may have seen her as Janet Van Dyne in several of the Marvel movies, plus films like Murder on the Orient Express and Mother. Peter, what did you think of Michelle Pfeiffer as Frankie?
Michelle Pfeiffer famously has this perfect icy beauty to her, but I think that she also plays neurotic very, very well. The main role that I associate her with is Batman Returns from A Year After This, where she uses both of those aspects to great effect. And I think here that she does play Frankie's various neuroses and the push-pull of her relationship with Johnny very, very well. That being said, it is hard for me to watch this movie without thinking of Kathy Bates not getting the role that she originated, because according to her, Garry Marshall did not think that she was conventionally attractive enough to play the lead in a Hollywood movie. It's something that she talked about recently in, I believe it was an article for People about her recent work on Matlock. And I think that when you cast Michelle Pfeiffer for a role instead of Kathy Bates, it is very obvious why you did that. And I feel kind of bad bringing that up because I think it does a disservice to Pfeiffer's performance in this, which is good. But also, I can't shake the feeling that Kathy Bates could have done just as good of a job. And I think it would have also driven home the ways in which Frankie feels beaten down by life.
The situation surrounding Kathy Bates was very unfortunate. Kathy had more than earned this role and would have been brilliant in it, but none of that is to be laid at the feet of Michelle Pfeiffer, who I think is doing an excellent job here, playing an atypical role for her, and I believe she is quite believable as Frankie, this beaten down waitress. Michelle totally invests herself in this character and makes the character seem real, and it doesn't seem overly performative. But of course, as I'm watching the film and I'm seeing how even a quote-unquote dowdy Michelle Pfeiffer is quite glamorous and beautiful through this whole film.
Right?
What they do is they mess up her hair a little bit. I think that was the main extent of it. I still think Michelle does a great job here. It's just unfortunate Hollywood casting.
Yeah.
We also, of course, have Hector Elizondo as Nick. It wouldn't be a Garry Marshall movie without him.
Then when you're going to give them change, they say, no, I give you 20. They rob you blind this country.
Peter, how does this compare to other Hector Elizondo performances we have seen?
This definitely plays into how Garry Marshall tends to cast Hector Elizondo as people in positions of authority who are also ultimately very supportive of the people around them. Nick is the kind of guy who throws going away parties for his busboys. He sends flowers to Helen's funeral. He tells Johnny that he's giving him a second chance because he believes in those. I will say that it is becoming a bit amusing that in casting Hector Elizondo, Garry Marshall is doing this ethnicity bingo. In Young Doctors in Love, he's Italian. In The Flamingo Kid, he's not Jewish.
What is he at Overboard?
He's Portuguese. In Pretty Woman, I think he's implicitly a wasp, and here he's Greek. And of course, in The Princess Diaries, famously, he is Genovian.
There was another actor named J. Carroll Nash who did the same thing, where he would play all ethnicities. We also have Kate Nelligan as Cora.
I wasn't exactly 100%. These shoes are cute, but they kill my feet.
Kate is an actress from Ontario, Canada, who's been working in film, theater, and television since the early 1970s. She was nominated for an Oscar for The Prince of Tides and won a BAFTA for this very movie. She's also a 4-time Tony nominee who has appeared in such Broadway shows as Moon for the Misbegotten, Plenty, and Serious Money. 3 years after this movie, she reunited with Michelle Pfeiffer for a werewolf movie called Wolf, directed by Mike Nichols and starring Jack Nicholson. Peter, what did you think of Kate Nelligan as Cora?
I thought she was a very good foil to Frankie in terms of being someone who rushes into sexual relationships because she's looking for the right one. I think her sex scene with Johnny is probably the funniest one in the movie. I loved her baffled reaction to his complete silence when he climaxes. I also thought it was very sweet, the way that she kicked him out, even though that's kind of odd to say, but I liked that her rationale was just, yeah, we did not click and we shouldn't try to force it. I appreciated that meant that there was no drama later on because of this. There's no scene where she's like, Frankie, how could you do this to me? It's just like, yeah, I tried him out. It didn't really work out. You go right ahead.
Thank you. Next.
I also really loved her delivery of you're trying to pick up a guy at a funeral in front of a stiff. That was great.
In some ways, Cora is the boldest addition to the movie because her character is not even hinted at in the play. Kate Nelligan brings a world-weary toughness and sense of humor to this character. I enjoyed her scenes a lot. We also have Jane Morris as Netta.
You know, she's been waiting on me for 10 years.
Well, no wonder she's sick.
Jane is a film and television actress from Quincy, Illinois, who's been working since the mid-1980s. Garry Marshall actually gave Jane her first big break with a supporting role in Nothing in Common.
But I give you your first break.
And she appeared in many of Garry's films after that. You may know Jane from her recurring role on The Drew Carey Show. Jane's other TV credits include
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Parks and Rec, Shameless, Veep, and Third Rock from the Sun.
Her non-Garry Marshall movies include True Lies. Peter, did you have any feelings about Jane Morris as Netta?
I liked her a lot. I thought that she was very good at being the more mousy straight man to the neurotic Frankie and the more bold Cora. They have a very fun scene all together after Cora has had sex with Johnny, and Cora keeps teasing Netta over her reluctance to even say the word sex, and Frankie has to defend her. I like that scene a lot.
I pointed out Jane Morris just because I like her performance in this movie so much. Netta is an eccentric lady with an eccentric way of expressing herself. I thought she added a weird, funny energy to this movie.
I also really liked her dance scene with Al Pacino at the party. That was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that is one of my favorite moments in the movie. We also have Nathan Lane as Tim.
Let me weave my magic spell.
Nathan is an incredibly prolific theater, film, and television actor from Jersey City, New Jersey, who has been wowing audiences and critics alike since the mid-1970s. He's won 3 Tonys and 3 Emmys, among many other awards. People may know him best from his stage roles in The Producers, Angels in America, Guys and Dolls, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and dozens more. Nathan's best-known films include The Lion King and The Birdcage. On TV, you may have seen him on
Frasier, Mad About You, Penny Dreadful, and American Crime Story.
But Peter, what do you think Nathan Lane added to this movie?
He's Nathan Lane. He is delightful no matter what. He is one of our greatest screen and stage presences of the last century. So I'm very glad that he was here. I think the role of Tim is a pretty basic gay best friend type.
This fate could have been avoided if she had a sassy gay friend.
But I liked his interactions with Michelle Pfeiffer and the fact that he is in a relationship when he is in the movie. I do think that does indicate that he has a life outside of her, so that's nice. Also, this film obliquely references the AIDS crisis. When in his first scene, Tim is talking about how you can't shut yourself off from the world because of, say, a virus. I know Terrence McNally was himself gay, but that did still surprise me a little just because this is a big mainstream movie from 1991. So that was kind of nice.
Even though Tim is a very stock character, as you mentioned, Nathan brings a lot of humor and wit to the film. I think Nathan's best scene is when Johnny keeps calling and Nathan keeps hanging up the phone over and over again. And at one point he tells Johnny,
I gotta go. We're expecting another call from you any minute.
Other actors worth mentioning include Day Young as Johnny's ex-wife, Bill Leeds as the elderly customer Mr. DeLeon, and Gordon Belson, brother of Garry Marshall's former partner Jerry Belson as Marlon, the disc jockey. Did you notice Phil Leeds as our elderly customer?
Yeah.
This is a nicer role than what he's given in Beaches. In Beaches, he plays the very creepy Sammy Pinkners of Sammy Pinkner's Kitty Review.
Yeah, and here he's just a nice old man. In the diner, there are all these very sitcom-y asides, which I found kind of charming. I'm sure that other people might find them a little bit unnecessary, but I found them fun.
As for our cultural and historical references, on her way to Altoona, Pennsylvania, Frankie passes Rockview Correctional Facility.
By the way, off to your right is Rockview Correctional Institution, one of the largest prisons in Pennsylvania.
Technically, this prison is known as SCI Rockview, or State Correctional Institution. As of 2025, the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections is recommending the closure of Rockview because the facility is aging and would be too costly to repair. So if you want to visit Rockview as part of your Frankie and Johnny bucket list, you'd better do it fast. That prison that we see Johnny leaving at the beginning of the movie is in reality Folsom, the one from the Johnny Cash song.
I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on.
It is still one of California's 34 active prisons.
When there's an entire song about how much you suck and you're destroying and dehumanizing the people inside of you, come on. I know that's true of all prisons, but this one especially.
After the christening, some children sing the Itsy Bitsy Spider. No one knows the exact origin of this nursery rhyme, but the earliest recorded versions started appearing in the early 1900s, and I thought it might be in this movie because the Itsy Bitsy Spider tells a story of redemption and rebuilding. The main character in the song gets washed out, and then what does he do, Peter? Does he give up? No, he starts climbing up the water spout again.
I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess that's true.
When Johnny first arrives at the diner, there's a car accident happening right behind him.
Oh my goodness, did you see that?
That was very real and not planned. It just happened when they were filming, and Garry Marshall decided to leave it in the movie. After getting the job, Johnny sings Camptown Races, provoking a sarcastic response from passerby Garry Marshall.
Camptown ladies sing the song, da-doo-da, da-doo-da. Got a job today. Who gives a shit?
Camptown Races is a minstrel show song written in 1850 by Stephen Foster. Did you notice the Garry Marshall cameo in that scene?
Yeah, that was fun.
Tim jokes about meeting his boyfriend Bobby at a Dr. Pepper audition. Nathan Lane actually did commercials for NyQuil, Pillsbury, and Armour's frozen food. I think this joke about Dr. Pepper is referencing the I'm a Pepper ad campaign featuring David Naughton.
I'm a pepper, he's a pepper, she's a pepper, we're a pepper, wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
Tim says he's dating Huck Finn because his boyfriend is from Kentucky. Mark Twain's rambunctious character Huckleberry Finn is famously from Missouri, not Kentucky. In all, Twain wrote 4 novels about Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer and was planning to write even more when he died in 1910. Cora refers to Johnny as Zorro while watching him chop vegetables. Zorro, whose name is Spanish for fox, is a fictional masked swordsman who first appeared in pulp novels by author Johnston McCulley in 1919. The character was later adapted quite successfully to both film and television many times over. Are we done with Zorro, or does Zorro have some gas left in the tank, so to speak?
I think it's time for Zorro to make a comeback. He's a proto-superhero. Superheroes are very big right now, but he's just left of field enough that you could do some unexpected things with him. You could do some fun things with the fact that he's a defender of the poor against the wealthy, exploiting them. Everybody always loves that. And he had some very successful movies in the 90s, so there's the nostalgia factor.
When Johnny quotes Romeo and Juliet to Frankie, he holds up a paperback copy of the play.
William Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. I'm reading it now. Act 3, Scene 1.
That's a 1984 edition from Folger Library. It's worth less than $3 today, so I imagine that copies of this particular edition were printed out by the thousands and given to students in the 1980s.
Yo, Romeo, check out that biatch Juliet in the window. Problem is, Juliet's peeps are like East Coast rappers, and my posse's representing West Side.
Mr. DeLeon says that in his day, the wonder drug was mercurochrome. This was a topical antiseptic containing mercury. It used to be common in the treatment of cuts and scrapes, but it was later banned by the FDA due to its toxicity. You cannot buy mercurochrome anymore, thank God.
RFK Jr. is in charge of the FDA now. Maybe it'll make a comeback.
Once again, just as in Nothing in Common, the characters in this movie drive up to the front door of a hospital and park their car right there. Please do not attempt this in real life. I don't know why Garry Marshall keeps putting this into his movies, but Gary, from the afterlife, please stop doing that. I hate that.
It's like when you can't park in front of a fire hydrant.
The Apollo restaurant is at 23rd and 9th.
The Apollo restaurant, 23rd and 9th.
That places it in the Chelsea neighborhood in the west side of Manhattan. And what I wanted to ask you, Peter, is do you think the Apollo restaurant is actually good?
I think it is. Growing up, there were a few restaurants like that within walking distance where it's just very hearty American food. I used to go there all the time because I really liked their cream of chicken rice. And watching this movie, I did start to get cravings for that again. I will say that it stressed me out a lot that none of the cooks looked like they were wearing gloves. When I worked at a fast food restaurant, we always wore gloves. It stressed me out a lot that they were not wearing gloves.
I would say that the Apollo restaurant probably serves some very decent grub, but is not very sanitary. So you take your chances when you go into a place like that.
Better than Arnold's, probably.
Well, yeah, it reminded me a lot of Arnold's. Netta says she's glad they didn't book St. Patrick's for Helen's funeral. She's referring to a large Catholic cathedral in Midtown Manhattan with a seating capacity of 2,400.
I guess Helen really was alone.
Johnny says that Helen kept a bottle of 4 Roses under her pillow.
She kept it going by putting a bottle of 4 Roses under her pillow every night.
This is a brand of bourbon that's been produced in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky since 1888. I only knew about 4 Roses because of its use in an Ed Wood movie. Otherwise, I never would have heard of it. When Johnny and Cora have sex, the Arsenio Hall show is playing in the background. From 1989 to 1994, comedian Arsenio Hall hosted his own late-night talk show on the Fox network. It was the first talk show to give The Tonight Show a real run for its money in decades. It was briefly revived in 2013 and 2014. At its peak in the early 90s, the show was a pop culture sensation. Julia Roberts even imitates Arsenio in Pretty Woman.
The main thing I know about it is that De La Soul hated Arsenio Hall because when they were guests on it, he cut their performance short so the end credits could run. It's just very funny to me that they hated him for the rest of their careers for that.
Later, Johnny reads aloud from Hamlet.
The morn in russet mantle clad walks o'er the dew of yon high eastward hill.
Although Al Pacino has never played Hamlet to my knowledge, he is a lifelong devotee of William Shakespeare and even directed a film called Looking for Richard about Shakespeare's Richard III. He has also played Shylock in The Merchant of Venice.
I have seen his Merchant of Venice, though. That was the version that we watched in my college Shakespeare class. That one does play Shylock as a more tragic character, which is really the only way you can play the character now, because otherwise, yeah.
Cora compares Johnny to Marcel Marceau, the French mime known for his Bip the Clown character. Marceau was known around the globe for his wordless performances, and his very name became synonymous with silence. Marceau died in 2007 at the age of 84. Netta says she watches Dr. Ruth. German-born sex therapist Dr. Ruth Westheimer was a Holocaust survivor who emigrated to America and broke through in the 1980s with a popular radio call-in show. In addition, she hosted various TV shows between 1984 and 1993 while making dozens of appearances on other talk shows. She died in 2024 at the age of 96.
I watched a lot of PBS growing up because my family did not have cable, so I watched a lot of the show Between the Lions, which was a Sesame Street-esque show about teaching kids literacy stuff. A recurring character on the show was Dr. Ruth Wordheimer, and instead of giving sex advice, she gave advice to letters and stuff.
It's not too hard. I will help you.
So that's my main association with Dr. Ruth Westheimer. My other association with her is learning that she was in the Haganah during the 1948 Israeli War of Independence, which is a little bit depressing.
The exact ages of Frankie and Johnny are a major source of discussion in both the play and the movie. If you're curious, Al Pacino was 51 at the time, and Michelle Pfeiffer was 33 at the time.
That is also very reflective of Hollywood casting practices.
Yes. Now, maybe I am overreading, but Tim's use of the phrase gentleman caller combined with the collection of elephant figurines on the shelf reminds me a little bit of the Glass Menagerie. Do you think that's being evoked here, or am I just making a connection where there isn't one?
I feel like it almost definitely is. There are definitely a lot of parallels between Frankie and Laura, although things go much better for Frankie than they do for Laura.
Tim jokingly calls himself the man who shot Liberty Valance.
Who are you going to tell him you are?
The man who shot Liberty Valance.
He's referring to a classic John Ford Western from 1962 starring John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, and Lee Marvin.
Of them all, 2 are the most memorable. Liberty Valance and the man who shot him.
In the film, Stewart plays a lawyer in the Old West who makes his reputation by shooting a ruffian named Liberty Valance, played by Lee Marvin. And I will admit, I have never seen The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Have you?
I have not, no, but I do want to see it.
Frankie says she looks like the Breck girl.
Oh my god, I look like the Breck girl.
From the 1930s to the 1990s, Breck shampoo was marketed with a series of print ads featuring idealized images of American womanhood. Numerous actresses and models started their careers working for Breck. Were you familiar with that ad campaign at all, the Breck girl?
I was not, no, before my time.
The way I knew it was from old issues of Mad Magazine. They did a lot of Breck parodies. They would call it Black Shampoo, of course.
Of course.
Tim says Bobby is from the Von Trapp family. This was a real-life family singing group founded in the 1930s in Austria. The group's origins were heavily fictionalized for the stage and screen musical The Sound of Music.
I live across the hall, and Bobby lives with the Von Trapp family.
Frankie says her elephant collection was inspired by Dumbo, the famous fictional elephant debuted in a 1941 animated film from Walt Disney. The movie was based on an unpublished children's book by Helen Aberson Mayer and her husband Harold Pearl.
See Dumbo's magnificent fall to fame, the most sensational climax ever filmed.
Netta sarcastically calls Johnny Captain Ahab when he wears a colorful scarf on his head. She's referring to the obsessive whaling ship captain from Herman Melville's 1851 novel, Moby Dick. Did you appreciate the reference to Moby Dick in this movie?
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, it's just because he's wearing the scarf that makes him look like a pirate, but still, it's fun.
When talking about his alleged childhood in Altoona, Johnny mentions St. Stephen's Hospital and Martell Street. I cannot find evidence of either actually existing. Frankie mentions Moody High School, also fictional. Johnny counters with a mention of Park Lane Elementary School, which is in Darby, Pennsylvania, over 200 miles away from Altoona. So I don't think either one of them is actually from Altoona. I think they're both faking the funk when it comes to their Altoona roots, Peter.
He's a phony! A great big phony!
I guess the evidence for Frankie being from Altoona is that she does go to Altoona right at the beginning of the movie, and why else would you do that?
I'm sure Altoona is a lovely city full of exciting things to look at.
Cora says Johnny's story is better than Old Yeller. The doomed dog known as Old Yeller debuted in a novel of that same name by Fred Gibson in 1956. The book was adapted to the big screen by Walt Disney in 1957 and became one of the biggest grossing films of that year. I have seen the film of Old Yeller. Have you?
I have not, no. The only thing I know about Old Yeller is the ending.
I think that will keep a lot of viewers away from Old Yeller.
Time for Doggy to go the way of Old Yeller.
At the bowling alley, Frankie says her situation is worse than looking for Mr. Goodbar. She's referring to a popular 1977 film in which Diane Keaton plays a young schoolteacher in New York who prowls the city's singles bars at night and gets more than she bargained for.
Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Soon, from Paramount Pictures.
Johnny sings Saturday Night is the Loneliest Night of the Week. This is a song written in 1944 by Sammy Kahn and Jewel Stein. It was popularized by Frank Sinatra, but has been covered by many singers over the years. I was not all that familiar with it, were you? The waitstaff serenade a customer on his birthday with For He's a Jolly Good Fellow, which gave me major Happy Days flashbacks. I think we all remember those scenes, don't we, Peter?
Yes.
Frankie promises to open her robe for at least 15 seconds. She more than delivers on her promise, holding it open for 43 seconds. Frankie says Johnny is jumping up and down and singing Yankee Doodle Dandy. Despite what the movies have told you, the name of that song is actually the Yankee Doodle Boy.
I am that Yankee Doodle Boy.
It was a show tune written in 1904 by George M. Cohan for a Broadway musical called Little Johnny Jones. And if you hear the whole song, most of it is about horse racing, and we've boiled it down to this one little part, which is about patriotism. Are you familiar with the full-length song, The Yankee Doodle Boy?
Yes, it is something.
So, Peter, were there any outstanding Garry Marshall fashions in Frankie and Johnny?
I really liked the bright red dress that Frankie was considering wearing to the party. I don't know what Tim was talking about. Trash talking it. Maybe it would have been dressing up a little, but come on.
So, Peter, I will ask that age-old timeless question. Was this movie any good?
I would say this movie was all right. There's a lot of stuff I like in it, and I think it does a good job of adapting a stage play without being too stage-bound. I think that if you watch this movie and you had no idea about Frankie and Johnny and the Clair de Lune, you would not think, oh, this was based on a stage play, the way that you might with a lot of other movies that are based on plays. That being said, I don't think the changes necessarily make it better. I think that Frankie and Johnny and the Clair de Lune works as well as it does because it's just two people in a room and they're talking. I think that opening it up more makes it an alright movie, but I don't think it's necessarily an improvement over the play.
For me, Frankie and Johnny was the prototypical nice little movie. This is just a nice little film in which almost nothing happens. Almost all of Garry Marshall's movies clock in at around 2 hours, and this one does as well. And once I got about an hour into it the first time, I realized, oh, nothing much has actually happened in the movie, and I figured that nothing much would actually happen in the second half of the movie, and I was right. This is not a very plot-driven film at all. It's just a character study. I would say that if you're going to experience this story, probably see the stage play. If you absolutely can't get out to a stage performance of this, the movie will do fine as a version of the story. It's basically the same story, but just acting out all the stuff that Frankie and Johnny are talking about in the play. You get the same material, just presented in a different way.
Same, but different.
So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things we are doing?
Listeners can follow me on Blue Sky at petervolfranc.bsky.social. I am not using Blue Sky as much anymore, but I'm there.
I am on Blue Sky at joeblevins.bsky.social. They can find this podcast online at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com, and they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at thesedaysaroourspodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, what do we have on the docket next time we get together?
Next time, I think we have one of the most infamous cases of lost in adaptation ever. It's the film that was based on an Anne Rice BDSM romance novel, and it's the one that decided to add a subplot involving Dan Aykroyd and Rosie O'Donnell as undercover cops. Exit to Eden.
It's difficult to believe that this movie exists, but it very much does, and we will cover it next time. So, see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
She don't like her eggs all runny. She thinks crossing her legs is funny. She looks down her nose at money. She gets it on like the Easter bunny. She's my baby, I'm her honey. I'm never gonna let her go.
He ain't got laid in a month of Sundays. Caught him once and he was sniffing my undies. He ain't too sharp, but he gets things done. Drinks his beer like it's oxygen. But he's my baby and I'm his honey. I'm never gonna let him go.
In spite of ourselves, we'll end up sitting on a rainbow. Against all odds, honey, we're the big door prize. We're gonna spike our noses right off of our faces. There won't be nothing but big old hearts dancing in our eyes.